Good morning, lovely souls. How are you today? I hope you're all well, fine, tickety-boo. I've got the dregs of a cold, but never mind that. It just might mean that I have to blow my nose or sip on my lovely hot peppermint tea as we're chatting. So here we are at the end of another month. As usual, I'm sitting here having a little think about how that month has been, thinking out loud, chatting with you guys. But here's the thing. It's month 24. Oh my wackadoodle goodness. Month 24, okay, I'll do the maths for you. 2 years. It's 2 years since my last paycheck. I'm a bit lost for words, to be honest. Wow. If I'd had a crystal ball back then, I wouldn't have... Yeah, let me have a little slurp. Hang on. Let's just let that sink in a minute. So yes, it was 2 years ago, pretty much today, that the last wage packet dropped into my bank account, and I'd handed in my notice at work, and that was it. You know, going back to then, obviously the whole reason I stopped work was because of the physical problem with my knees, which at that stage were bad, but I've got to say 2 years on are way worse. I can't begin to imagine doing a 13-hour shift on these knees now. I mean, I do 3 hours in the garden, but with loads of little sit-down breaks. Every 20 minutes or so I have a sit-down. There's no way. Anyway, so that whole knee issue precipitated what has now followed. And at the time, I think my thinking was quite simple, that I'd paid off my mortgage, so I didn't have... Obviously, that's the big overhead for all of us each month, is paying our mortgage or our rent. I didn't have that, and I was growing masses of my own food anyway. So I think idly thought, well, yeah, I could support myself just from the garden. Wrong. Anyway, so those first few months after leaving work, I suppose I don't think it all sank in properly for the first few months, because it was the end of April, so I went into May, June, July, August in the garden in the summer. It was absolutely beautiful, and that summer my sister took me away to the south of France for a birthday treat. It was my first holiday in years. And I think in many ways over those first few months, I was in sort of holiday mode. You know, I didn't have to set my alarm clock for 4:30. You guys know by now how much I hate mornings. So I didn't have to set my alarm clock for work. I didn't have to do any study on my days off, because I think that's something that people who aren't in nursing or aren't living with a nurse don't realise, is the vast amount of study we do all the time. Once you've graduated from doing your degree, that's just the beginning. So yeah, I had this whole summer of no alarm clocks, no homework, no essays to write. It was brilliant. And of course, at the same time, I set up this channel, and I immediately really enjoyed making the videos. It's sort of a bit of a creative outlet for me, so in a way it was sort of harking back to something I'd done years before nursing. It was all very lovely and sort of la-di-da. And then we sort of came into that first winter, and I think that's when it began to really sort of sink in of where my new life was at and where it might go. Yeah, it was the first time I sort of properly took stock of how much food am I growing? Can I really grow enough food to live on? I was managing to pay my ordinary everyday bills, the sort of gas, water, electricity, contents insurance, buildings insurance, ground rent, maintenance fund, all that kind of stuff. I was managing to pay that with the little bit of revenue from YouTube, but that was it. So each month I was getting those basic bills paid, and that was it. So yeah, it was over that winter that I started to think, I need something more. I do need to generate some sort of income, because, this is something I fantasize about a lot. And definitely there's part of me, I always say don't have regrets in life. And I don't, but I think if there's one thing I kind of slightly regret, it's that I didn't, at the age of 25 or 30, make this move. But then at the age of 25 or 30, I wouldn't be armed with the stuff that's got me through this last 2 years, which I'll come on to in a minute. Anyway, one of my fantasies would be that I live on my own small holding. I've got space for wind turbines, solar panels, I've got my own water source, all those things. That's when you can really start to live without a wage, is when you're generating your own power, you've got your own water source, etc. Anyway, so back to that first winter, so the winter of 2017 going into 2018, it became apparent that although I was managing, in life we want to do more than manage, don't we? I wanted to be able to generate some income just for the really ordinary things in life, like paying for a train fare to go and visit with family, or the occasional night in the pub with my mates. That's the one thing I really miss. I was thinking about this the other day. In these 2 years, what have I missed the most? What have I sort of given up? And I think that's number one, is just being able to go to the pub and hang out with friends. Anyway, digressing. So it was over that winter that I was thinking, what can I do? And I was thinking, okay, what skills do I have that I can use without having to go to someone to try to get them to pay me to work for them? And that's when I came up with the thought of using my sewing skills. Now, I'm not a dressmaker, not for years. I'm not any fancy pants sewer, but I am neat and I'm thorough and I enjoy it. So that's kind of where I started to think about, I can make things like bunting, I can make cotton shopping bags, all that sort of stuff. So I set to and I started actually making a few bits and pieces, and initially I was selling just privately to an odd friend here or there, a little private commission, which was great, but I also realised, I need to kind of push this a bit more. So that's when the idea of having the online shop started. And then I thought, I love buying and selling anyway. I love finding treasures. I love giving things a good scrub and bringing them back to life. So that's where the idea for the shop came. So by the spring of last year, by this time last year, that the wheels in that were very much in motion. And I've got to say, these last 2 years have been so much learning for me. I don't necessarily mean in the garden, don't necessarily mean with sewing, but my goodness, with technology, I'm so rubbish at technology. But without the power of technology, social media, etc., etc., I really would not have been able to do these last 2 years at all. Well, I would have, but it it would look very different if I had to take a very different tack. So yeah, I think like looking back over the whole 2 years, it's interesting to see the sort of the ups and downs of how it's gone. There's been moments of I felt so joyous and optimistic. There've been other moments where I felt a bit scared and a bit down with things, and it's definitely been quite a long adjustment, and I think I'm still adjusting, if I'm honest. I was thinking this just the other day, that when I was working full time, and say I would have 3 days off, sometimes 4 days off a week. Sounds like a lot of days off, but you've got to remember the hours are crazy long. So usually the first day off is just sleeping. But I would manage, say 2 days in the garden, 2 full days, I'd get everything done, brilliant. On the third day, I would either be doing cares with my great aunt, or doing stuff in the flat, repairs, admin, what have you. I was thinking, you know, in a way that was so much easier then. I definitely do way more hours now than I did back then. That's partly because of my knees. So when I do the garden, everything takes me so much longer than it used to. And this is also part of the adjustment in the last 2 years. You know, there have been times, this time last year, last spring, I was so frustrated by how slowly I was going because of having to stop all the time because of my knees. But I've come to accept where I'm at with them, and I kind of work around it better. But yeah, as I was just saying a second ago, this last 2 years, a massive period of adjustment, and I think that's ongoing. So, for instance, right now, I think I could use my time better. I still think my time management isn't great. It's hard to put my finger on, I try to. But the truth of it is, living like this, I work 7 days a week now. So, for instance, after I've finished chatting to you guys today, I will go to the computer, sort out the edit for this video, and then it takes ages to save and upload and all that stuff. But while it's doing that, I'll then do some sewing. After I finish doing the sewing, I can't remember what else is on my list today, but I've got a list. I've got a list of things that I need to do. Oh, I need to start doing my tax return for last year. And I know these are things that, you know, most people have, but the bottom line is, when you work for yourself, say by crafting, by sewing, the pay per hour is tiny compared with, say, going and working for the bank, for example. So it just means you have to do more hours. You know, if what I would get paid if I did an 8-hour day in a bank it would take me, in terms of sewing, I'd probably have to work 4 days, 5 days, all day, every day, 10 hours or more to make that kind of money. Now, my life is not about money. You guys know that by now. But like I'm saying, I do need money for other stuff, so I do have to generate that income for myself. And I'm not complaining about the amount of time it takes, not at all. I'd rather spend 10 hours sewing than 10 minutes sitting behind a glass panel in a bank. That's not a judgment on people who work in banks, by the way. It just would not suit me. So, goodness me, I have absolutely no regrets about anything in these last 2 years. I cannot quite comprehend that it is 2 years. when I initially left work, do you know what? I haven't even looked at that video I did that month. I might go back and look at it and see what I was saying. That'll be really interesting. But I kind of thought, I wasn't thinking long term. I mean, I was hoping long term, but in reality I was thinking, well, let's see how I go for a few months. I did not for a minute dream that I would go for 2 years. And let's face it, I'm not stopping today. So hopefully I'll go for another year or 2 years like this. So yeah, no regrets whatsoever. I think I've gradually put things in place for myself to sustain myself. And that's what this is all about, isn't it? It's about that self-reliance and sustainability of whatever we're doing. I think I need to fine tune a few things, because I think being sensible, I really, really need to work on this idea of a day off each week. Because, so this is something I was referring to a minute ago. The only really scary thing about all of this, I have total faith in myself. I don't know where that comes from. Is it something we're born with? Is it something we get through life? I don't know. But I do have an inner confidence about my ability to deal with whatever. And yes, of course, sometimes there are tears and sometimes there are tantrums. And sometimes I find myself thinking, I can't. But I always do. And I just somehow draw on some sort of inner strength to deal with things. But physically, I'm human. I'm not an alien. And, you know, my body is not getting younger and fitter. Actually, I'm getting a little bit fitter. I've been doing loads more physio. But it's a slightly scary thing that I've only got me to rely on. So if I get sick, I'm kind of scuppered. And like I say, I don't have any regrets about this last couple of years. But the one thing I do reflect on quite a lot, and I'll be honest, there are times I dwell on it and I get a bit miserable and grumpy about it, is it's really hard doing it on your own. I find it, doing it on my own, it's really, really hard. Swapped to water now. I need another cup of tea. Can someone go and make me a cup of tea, please? Yeah, it's really hard doing it on my own, both physically and mentally. So, you know, physically, there are times and I just think, I just want to stop. I just need a day off. But if I don't do that thing, it don't get done. So I'm sort of always pushing myself through a place where I should have probably stopped and rested. But then I don't see how it's going to get done, so I do it. And I just think sometimes, you know, it'd be so lovely to be doing this with someone else. It'd be so lovely to have a partner, because imagine I work hard all day in the garden, I come home and the partner has made dinner. It's something I fantasize about, even if it's just once a month, someone else to make dinner for me and to wash up afterwards. I know it sounds like the silliest little thing, but, you know, at the end of a long day when I'm, you know, absolutely pooped, and then I think, and now I've got to cook. Or just silly little things like, you know, I can't even think of an example. Let's say there's something urgent to sort out in the garden and I have to go and sort out my great aunt. It would just be amazing if I had a partner who was a gardener and I could say, right, I've got to go off to my great aunt for the day. Are you okay getting the bean tunnel sorted because it's all collapsed? so from the physical point of view of just getting everything timed, like I've got loads of repairs to do in the flat at the moment, and I'd love to be able to divvy those jobs out between me and someone else. But definitely the mental side of doing it on one's own. Like I say, I think I'm pretty strong deep down. But when you have to deal with every single problem that comes along on your own, it can be exhausting. It can just be so exhausting. Like this stuff that's going on with the building, I just really wish I could hand over some of the tasks to do with it to someone else, but I can't. So yeah. Anyway, that's not a pity party that I'm on my own. That was my choice a couple of years ago when I started out on this little adventure. I also ended a long-term relationship right at the same time. Talk about having some changes in one's life. But yeah, I would say that's definitely the only downside in the last couple of years is it's really hard physically and mentally to do it on one's own and to just keep doing it. Most days I wake up and I'm so motivated and so energised to get on with everything. It's not a huge issue. But there are some days and I just think, I just wish there was someone else to deal with this. But also likewise, celebrating things. It's always really nice to have someone around to celebrate with, isn't it? Now, I'm really fortunate that I have a lot of really, really good friends. So when it comes to the celebrating, there's usually folk around to do that with. So yeah, it's pretty much all good. So the next year, I don't know. I think I've got enough things in place now, say with the sewing and the shop and doing the videos, that I've worked out how much of that I need to do. I sort of worked out a system, and hopefully that will gather momentum and will get better over the course of this next year. I need to find more time for sewing, which I think I can actually. I think I can, because I think I've quite a lot of the stuff I've dealt with this winter indoors has been stuff I won't have to deal with again, which means next winter I can do more sewing during the winter to be ready to hit the ground running in the summer. So I don't see any reason at all why I should jack it all in now. No. If I did say, that's been fun, but actually I'm going to jack it all in and just go and get a job working in a shop 5 days a week, would that be a failure? I don't think so. I don't think it would. I think, initially I set out to see if I could survive without a wage for 1 year. And I did it. So I don't think I've failed in any way. Of course, I'm so competitive with myself that now in my head I'm thinking 10 years. Who knows? Who knows what the future will bring, what the next few years will bring. There are two things, I think, which will impact over the next few years. One is how much more my knees and wrists degenerate, because my wrists, having broken both of them 3 years ago, they're full of arthritis now too. And obviously that does have an impact when I'm sewing. They get really, really sore. Not as bad as my knees, but if either of those two things get really, really bad, then that, of course, that will impact on what I'm able to do. And then the other thing is, and I don't mean this in a morbid way at all, I would like eventually to move. I think I will have to at some point anyway, because there are 60 stairs up to the top floor where I live. Oh my goodness, 60 stairs with rubbish knees is, it's wretched after a day in the garden. So I do need to move to, I'd like to have a ground floor dwelling of some sort. I can't bear bungalows. No offence to anyone who lives in a bungalow. Just this kind of like 1950s, 1960s chalet bungalows. Not for me. I need a cottage. But yeah, I will need to move at some point or to a ground floor property. I would love to stay in this area because I have so many good friends here. And of course my garden. However, there's no way I can afford a ground floor property. I have looked. Generally with ground floor properties, they're 1-bed flats, they come with a garden, that whacks the price right up. I never see studio flats like I've got up here on a ground floor. The stupid thing is I've got way more square footage up here than some of my friends who've got 1-bed flats. So yeah, I'm priced out of the area. So when that time does come, it will mean me leaving London, which I'm loath to do because I do love it here for very many reasons. Probably I would love to head down to Dorset, but I don't have any family. All my family live up north, way up north, all of them, apart from Auntie Teapot, which I'll come on to in a second. So it, you know, in a way it seems daft to, because next time I move, I would hope that would then be my forever property. So let's say I did that in 10 years, let's say I was 60, I would like then to be there till the day I die. And most of the women in my family get to 100. So wherever I go to next, I could be there for 40 years. So I love Dorset, but it would seem foolish in some ways to go to somewhere that's so far from the rest of my family. I'd be really, really isolated. And I know, because of all the cares I've had to do for my great aunt, one of the reasons it's been me that's done everything is because geographically I'm the closest to her. I'm not that close, you know, as I've mentioned before, it's a 6-hour round trip, it's crazy. So I'm not that close, but I'm closer than anyone else. So, and I know that's been really difficult at times for me to be able to do that. So if I was in Dorset and the rest, Dorset, I went a bit Dorset then, didn't I? And if all my other family are right up in the north of England, and if something went wrong, then who's going to be able to come and help me? And I wouldn't dream of asking anyone to travel that far to come and help me. So it's probably more likely when I move that I'm going to end up, and I can't believe I'm saying this, I'm going to end up in Yorkshire. I'm a Lancashire lass. I get hives when I go to Yorkshire. But yes, I will probably end up moving to Yorkshire, be nearer my sister. I've already been looking at various areas, various properties. I've been looking at Thirsk. I've been looking at, what's it called now? My sister took me there for the day to have a look around. Saltburn, is it Saltburn? Yeah. Alnwick, I love Alnwick, up in Northumbria. So yeah, that's highly likely. However, at the moment, I can't do anything about that because of my great aunt. So, and this is what I meant when I was saying I don't mean it in a morbid way. I can't move until she dies because I have to be near for her for, you know, looking after her. She's coming up 99. I can see her going on for another 20 years. I've joked about it, but seriously, I can see me popping my clogs before she does hers. Anyway, that seems like a massive digression. I'm really rambling on now, aren't I? You know, in a nutshell, And what I'm trying to say is that I see no reason for me to not to carry on as I have been for the last couple of years. I think there are some parts of it I'll get better at, so I can rationalise how I do things and spend less time doing it or be more productive in that time, etc, etc. Don't see any reason why I shouldn't carry on like this. I would like at some point to move. When I move, I will definitely be looking for property with some land so I can start a new garden wherever I end up, carry on crafting and selling things that way. Yeah, and let's face it, in another 10, 15, how long do you have to wait these days? I think it's 15 years. In another 15 years, I'll actually get some pension. So if I can just hang on for another 15 years, I'll get some money coming in. It's crazy, isn't it? Oh my goodness, on that thought, I can't imagine 65-year-old Vivi. Not at all. So listen, on that thought, I'm going to wrap it up for today. It would have been great to have had a bottle of something with bubbles in whilst celebrating my 2-year anniversary, but it's only 10 o'clock in the morning and I've got a lot of work to do today. So we've all seen what happens at Christmas, New Year when I start chugging on bubbly stuff. I'm insensible within half an hour. So I shall raise it's now empty, I'll go and fill it again. I shall raise a cup to all of you to say thank you so much for coming along on this journey with me, for watching me during great times, during some low times, for always encouraging and supporting, and your comments. You know, I've said it before and I know that I will say it again, but your comments are such food for my soul. So yes, cheers to you all. Oh, I've got an itchy nose and there's not a cat in sight. Cheers to you all. You're all blooming marvellous. And, you know, you've actually all been a massive, massive part of my life for the last couple of years. So I hope you will continue to be so for the next 2 years, or 10 years, or 20 years. No, I'm not even going to think about me sitting here saying, do my reflection of month 578. Oh my goodness. I can imagine it on the day I get buried, filming myself being put into the ground. Right, that's enough. Honestly, I've not had a drop to drink. Anyway, there we go. 2 years done. Thank you all for everything you've given me over these last 2 years. It's been an absolute blast and I love you all for it. And now I'm going to say cheerio to you all. I will see you again soon, back in the garden, but until then, have a wonderful day, whatever you're up to. Have a wonderful life, however you're living it. Take care of yourselves.